What is up everyone, Talon here and welcome back to the channel. Today I have a very special system. This one here is going to be completely decked and built out, and it is actually a classic, generally a go-to within any type of indoor environment, and comes from a very long line within both the real world and within airsoft. Ladies and gentlemen, the Tokyo Marui Breacher. Custom built and brought to you by a friend of the channel's, a local tactician turned father recently, so he's always got his fun stuff, but it gets a little bit less miles than it used to. Now, before we go too deep, we do need to take a second in order to thank the people that are going to help put this together. Milwaukee Custom Kydex, mckydex.com, in order to go and look at all of your holster mag carrier solutions. Some of the ones that I have run in very recent videos are going to be his most recent release, his Alpha holsters. I do have his pistol and AR mag carriers. I also am utilizing his most recent radio carriers, the rack system, that you can see modeled and demoed on this chest rig right here. This allows for very easy access in order to beep bop your numbers, in order to change your volume or your channel that you are on, so you can continue on telling your BB battle buddies absolutely nothing, because we are the worst at communication. The second person we need to thank, special thank you to the friend of the channel that has put this rifle, this selection on loan with me, as well as the other rifle that we have off from the side here that's going to be a future video. So of course, as long as you want to see that and more of the stuff that I'm producing, like dropping shit, like, comment, subscribe, all of these things I absolutely appreciate. I always need reminders whenever I watch anyone else's channels, so this is my friendly reminder to you. So let's get into it. So let us actually get into it. This is a very unique rifle setup. One, because it actually doesn't come from the factory or from any distributor like this. Tokyo Marui is a very old airsoft manufacturer, and thus they have quite a wide selection of products. This one being probably a classic go-to for indoor CQB. For airsoft specifically, this was an absolute game changer. I can recall many years ago getting absolutely shit on by some of these systems and wanting one for myself, but never actually got the opportunity due to some performance features that maybe were not features, but they were systems that I was not a huge fan of whatsoever. And we're actually going to talk about that. So this, as a base rifle system, if we remove the tracer unit / mock suppressor, we got rid of the heat shield, we got rid of the optic, the side saddle, as well as this hose down here, that would be our Tokyo Marui Breacher. It would be a traditional breacher shotgun that you see a lot of militaries, law enforcement, and movies utilize for whatever they're doing. Most traditionally, when it comes to a breacher model, it's going to be for breaching doorways, getting in very close in order to make absolute disruption, to get in there with a lot of violence. And violent is something that I probably would describe this system. So there's a couple of drawbacks to this platform in particular, excluding a lot of the accessories that I had mentioned before. Number one, and most obvious, is going to be the lack of a stock here. So with a traditional rifle system, you have your grip on your handguard, grip on your grip, as well as a position on your stock. That is your 3 points of contact. 1, 2, as well as 3. And with those 3 points of contact, that give you the most amount of stability in order to point the rifle in the direction that you want. This system in particular, because the design of it was to be so close to your doorway or to your wall, that you really didn't need any type of stock in order to point and aim this, because up against the wall was your 3rd point of contact. Number 1, number 2, butted up against the wall or door for contact number 3. And that was the easiest way in order to aim at whatever you're aiming at. Now, the other thing that I dislike about this system as well is going to be the short barrel length. Airsoft BBs in particular need more barrel length in order to have a straighter, longer flight path in order to get to our target. When we talk about not only short inner barrels, but a multitude of inner barrels that we have on the inside of here, this one uniquely having 3 inner barrels, if you can see that. Now with 3 inner barrels, that is going to have a wide spread of effect, very often negative effects on our BB flight paths. It also means that any type of hop-up adjustments are pretty much null. We can't make any adjustments to how much pressure that rubber patch is going to have to our BBs, and so we have to either utilize very specific BB weights. If we know that 2.0s are too light, we just have to keep going up. Unfortunately, if we get up to 2.8s and they're still over hopping, you just got to keep going up. Or worse yet, out of your 3 inner barrels, one of them will do crazy overhops and the other 2 are perfectly flat. That is the worst case scenario, and it is a pretty common occurrence when it comes to shotguns with 3 inner barrels. One of the other biggest drawbacks with this platform in particular is the fact that it is fed with shotgun shells. Now, these shells in particular are going to hold 30 rounds. Keep in mind, like I had said previously, there are 3 inner barrels, which means there must be at least a BB associated with each inner barrel, which means at a minimum 3 shots. With a 30 round magazine, or shell in particular, you get 10 total shots per shell. On the very side here, we have 6 shells, which 10 shots per shell, that's 60 shots. That's actually more than what a traditional gas blowback LM4 option would have. That doesn't seem too bad of an option. One of the other options would be switch this shotgun into 6-shot mode. So instead of 3 BBs per inner barrel, you're now getting 2 BBs per inner barrel. And this is more realistically mimicking the spread shot of a true shotgun, which is a very, very cool function and feature. However, that does now half the amount of shots that we get per shell, which means each shell gives us 5 shots. The 6 shells that we have in conjunction to the rifle system now gives us 30 total shots, which is now less than what a standard LM4 offers, which is not awesome considering the fact that we have only this as our magazine options. Now, granted, kit specific, you could include multiple shells. I mean, they're shells. They're easy enough to put into pockets. They're easy enough to fit onto your person. That's not such a hard system. However, when we talk about the reload function in mechanics, this model in particular has had that mag tube tray removed. So there used to be a little latch that would open and close as we were open and close this shotgun in particular. So we would need to open that latch, feed our shell in, and then close it up. And then from there, we can start to rack and shoot, which means when we were done with that shell, hit that, latch would open, shell would come out, and in pops the next one. If we do that every 5 shots, that means we're constantly feeding our shotgun, and that's not awesome. And that's not awesome when we're talking about an indoor environment specifically. However, I can also see the argument that it's not too far off compared to the actual tube capacity of what this was built for and built upon. So is it real? It's not convenient for airsoft. However, it's not too far off based on realism of what this platform in particular is designed for. However, when we're going up against battery powered systems that are going to have a magazine capacity of at least 60 rounds, most typically we're looking at 100 or 120 rounds per magazine, which 120 rounds per magazine. I actually have BBs on the inside of here. 120 BBs, 120 rounds. And I can fit 3. I currently have on that kit 3 magazines. That's 360 shots that can go into a rifle system. Compared to, even on 3-shot mode, 60 shots. The playing field, when we're talking about with an airsoft engagement, specifically in an airsoft environment, 360 rounds compared to 60. That's a very drastic difference when it comes to actual BB output. So it was not uncommon for a lot of these indoor players, in order to come up with some creative alternatives, which goes into now the actual built construction of this platform in particular. We have on the very side here our 6 shells, but that doesn't mean that there hasn't been a very cool adapter in order to utilize standard airsoft AR type magazines in order to feed with 120 rounds going into our shotgun shell or our shotgun platform. And that makes it so much easier in order to feed our hungry beast right here and create a system that is unwavering in its violence. One of the other things that it has solved in particular with the base rifle system is the base rifle was designed to utilize green gas canisters. Green gas has been a standard for small compact platforms. Take into consideration all of the airsoft pistol replicas. Almost all of them utilize a green gas base. The other half are going to be CO2 powered for your larger options, but for small and compact, green gas is the way to go. That being said, in my experience as well as with general conversation with airsoft players, you could potentially go through 5 or 6 shells on a fully loaded gas canister. The gas canister would fit on the inside of the grip right here. So it's very easy without the hose attached, running the original Tokyo Marui Breacher in order to do your shots, shot, and then just tip it over mid-game, and then just top it off with whatever green gas canister you have. Whether it be in a pocket, in your dump pouch, something that you can easily and quick top off, and then get right back into the violence. Due to the extremity of the base violence from this platform, it was very easy to run through that gas reservoir, and thus it would, with the basics of green gas, it would actually freeze and get very cold. And when green gas gets colder, it actually will confine or constrict the amount of volume of gas that it has in its reservoir, which means the 6 shells, theoretically, that you were able to go through on the first fill of the reservoir, you might only go through 4 or 3 shells due to that gas constriction in a cold environment. Then the next time you fill it up, you might only get 2 shells. Fill it up again, 1 shell. And now your act of violence has been cut extremely short due to the physical constraints of physics, because that's just how physics work. So the easiest solution was to utilize small oxygen tanks from Tippmann. I wonder if I have mine in here. So shortly after realizing that you could take a small tank of oxygen, this one from a Tippmann oxygen tank, fill it with compressed air, and from that compressed air, you have a regulator. Regulator, set it at 100 psi, which is generally what green gas is set at. And then from there, you can simply lock it or attach it to your hose, like so. I said like so. And then you have all of your shots. So based on my demonstration, you could tell that this is actually a slam fire system, which means as long as you're holding, depressing that trigger, and you're racking that pump, you're going to get a shot every time that pump goes forward. The action of the pump coming backwards is going to load the BBs from the shell, or the magazine in this case, into those inner barrels. The pump forward is going to lock that chamber closed, and as that pump hits the very end of that action, the trigger sear is going to come forward, releasing all of that compressed air inside that tube. So when we talk about extreme violence, This platform is becoming more and more violent, as you can tell. With an empty shell here, you have it loaded, and we have our 6 rounds to go 5 shots. Very quick and very easy in order to do those 5 shots. And those 5 shots carry 6 rounds in total, which means our little shell is now void. It is now useless, which means we need to fill it up with another shell. And again, with the ease of that first shell, I can very easily go through the next one. So it's very easy. By demonstration, it's very easy to go through all of your shells. And so that is where this adapter comes into play. This adapter is going to fit in where these shells are going to load. You would have all of your M4 magazines that would attach and load into that adapter, which means from the 120 round magazine, if my math is correct, you would be able to get 20 total pumps from that magazine at 6 shot loads. 20 pumps, that is a lot of pumps. Let's talk about pumps, that's a lot of pumps. But that means that that act of violence can continue for a longer period of time than just relying on simple shells. And let's face it, just because you have an optic on here does not necessarily mean that that is going to make it that much easier to hit targets with those 20 pumps. Makes it look very cool, but when we have all of the spread of the BBs, and in the case of some of these, they don't spread very far. So let's go and take a quick look at what the spread of this particular model looks like. Pretty sick, right? So there's a couple of things that are going into play here. First and foremost, we're utilizing a custom-made tracer unit. This is going to allow very specific BBs to glow and illuminate as they pass through this device right here. This device is custom-made, it is 3D printed, and it does have its own infrared lights that are going to glow on the inside of here, and they are attached very specifically and directly to the Tokyo Marui Breacher. Now, I have here a tracer unit that a lot of times will fit onto most commonly rifles, but on certain pistols as well. This one in particular is what is referred to as the Ace-Tech Bifrost. This one specifically is utilizing a front panel of LEDs that are going to illuminate as an object, ideally a BB, as it passes through. That's going to create a very bright flash as it passes through. And it is very, very, very cool when you get it to actuate. We're a little bit more hardcore. We like stuff like this that is going to replicate and mimic the real world. In the case of airsoft specifically, this also does do that same tracer effect, which is as that tracer BB passes through, it's going to illuminate it and creates that very cool Star Wars effect. The heat shield in particular is going to have all of the rail options along the very top here, which means if you want to have the option of a flashlight, such as a in-force model, you would have the capability of putting it on the very top here. However, this heat shield is very loose when it comes to this model in particular. They do have it jerry-rigged, unfortunately, to fit this model in particular. So towards the very front, where there's no support other than pressing up against our tracer unit here, there's a lot more give and a lot more wobble to this heat shield. So it is going to pull the optic downwards. It's going to pull that trajectory downwards, which is going to mess with the zero of this. However, it's a shotgun, it's an area target, which means you just roughly aim it, pull the trigger, and hopefully it's not some 12-year-old rental with his birthday party. Otherwise, he is not coming back. So now we've gone over the basic functionality of this system in particular. So what is the actual use case within Airsoft? Well, within Airsoft, it allows for very close, very tight CQB indoor environments. Unfortunately, it does get subjected to maybe very speed, maybe tournament-based CQB. Within Airsoft, there's a program referred to as Speed QB. Well, I shouldn't say referred to. It is called Speed QB. It is a It is a airsoft tournament-based regulation program, which means they have very specific field layouts, they have very specific rules, and they have very specific regulations as far as when you participate in these Speed QB tournaments. What are some things that you can use? What are some things that you can look forward to? So on and so forth. So within those Speed QB guidelines, Tokyo Marui Breacher actually fits extremely, extremely well. If a player was wanting to sit just in indoors, which means they don't want to go outdoors pretty much ever or at all, this might be something that actually works very, very, very well for you. However, we need to consider what maybe some of our targets might feel when we blast them, maybe a little too much. Again, coming from a perspective of someone that has also been a victim of a Tokyo Marui Breacher's violence, they do get very, very, very violent. With the amount of BBs that is coming out of this one and some others, that 6 shot is very tightly grouped, which means when you are within 12, 10 feet, maybe even 0 feet within specific fields, that is a lot of force that is hitting skin. Even clothed sweatshirt skin, that's still going to hurt a lot. So if you are utilizing the Tokyo Marui Breacher or you are looking towards getting a breacher for yourself, some things that I would encourage you to look at, challenge you to look at, is the perspective from the other people that you are playing against. What are some of the potential victims that are going to be subjected to this breacher violence? Are you okay with going down to 3 shots? Because that's a little bit more forgivable than the 6 shot. If you will be utilizing the 6 shot, are you going to be more careful about that minimum engagement distance, how close you are in proximity to the player you are playing against? And are you going to be a gentleman with it? This is a gentleman's sport, so you do need to act appropriately and respectfully against your fellow players. One of the biggest things that us older players have been talking about is if we are too violent, too aggressive, too much of a bully to some of the other players we are playing against, that means they're not having a good time. If they're not having a good time, they're not going to want to come back, and potentially we're going to lose a lot of potential targets that are at a lot of these fields. Airsoft is a game at the end of the day, and if unfortunately some of the people that I'm playing against don't want to come back, that means our 20 on 20 now becomes a 10 on 10, which becomes a 5 on 5, which then further diminish until no one wants to play anymore, because people are just being bullies and no one wants to get seriously hurt when playing airsoft. Everyone still wants to have fun. So as long as you are respectable and you are playing appropriately with the breacher, again, I'm kind of a older player, so I might intentionally utilize just the shells. I am a huge, huge fan of the fact that I am challenging myself, and I personally would utilize the shells not in the side saddle here. I would instead, I gotta unload some of these shells first. So having had a shotgun for a short while in my collection, I ended up upgrading to a battery powered system and to all of the ones that I have in my collection right now, so I don't have a shotgun. Of the shotguns that I had, I went with a Velcro shell carrier instead of the metal one. Metal one does a very, very good job for retaining these shells and holds on to them really well. Unfortunately, that means in the speed of me trying to load a shell up into my receiver, it does slow me down just a little bit. So the Velcro options that are going to be a nylon, it's easier to pull the shells from the bottom. So instead of having to utilize my thumb to push the shells down and yank them out, I would be able to, on the Velcro ones, just pull from the bottom, not having to utilize a lot of force. So I would have my Velcro nylon string on the very side here, and then with all my empty shells, they would go into a pocket or into a dump pouch. Now on my chest here, when I'm utilizing a plate carrier, you'll notice that my chest panel is Velcro as well, which means there's a second and potentially a third shotgun shell Velcro carrier. So once this Velcro one ran out, I would pull that off, put that into the dump pouch as well, or put it right onto my chest. The ones that are full on my chest, I can pull off and put onto the side of my shotgun shell. So I'm not pulling from my chest, I'm resupplying and refilling the carrier that's on the side of the shotgun right here. So it's faster and easier for me to get access to the shells that are on that nylon carrier. And I just have to get really, really good about being able to replace in order to get these back up to the fight. Now, the other sad thing with the Tokyo Marui Breacher as well is that you need the action of the pump in order to get your shot, your trigger, actuated, which means you can't get too busy with putting that empty shell into a dump pouch or into any type of carrier, because if someone comes around, oh shit. So one of my reloading techniques, take it for however it's worth, is I'm gonna come from a high ready, right? So I'm gonna have my shot on empty. I'm gonna, ideally with a stock, twist in ever so slightly, move my grip hand upwards just a little bit so I can get my trigger finger up onto that latch in order to pop that shell out, catch it, and then while my other hand is feeding the next shell in, I can rotate that switch hand down onto the grip, and then I can either load my next shot in with that, and then once I've got my shot loaded up, get that finger onto the trigger, dump that shell, and then I'm back to go. So this might be an example of what one of those reloads would look like. I currently just have the shells. I'm actually gonna put an empty one up on the inside on one of the saddles here. I'm gonna put 2 in my pocket, and I'm just gonna hold those out right there. So let's see from a high ready, get my one shot. Pretty quick. What if I retain that shell? Get that shot. Oh my God, I fuddled. Okay. Now I'm gonna pull from the side saddle. Pretty quick. I still think pretty quick. Now, if I'm utilizing that magazine adapter, pretty quick as well. And again, we have all the capabilities as well as benefits of utilizing the higher capacity of the AR style of magazine. So something I want to impart with you guys before we leave is something from my personal experience over the continuation of seeing these airsoft shotguns, and the continued age of a shotgun will show itself when we look at any of the arms from the pump to the interior of the shotgun receiver. These arms, at the very end of my finger here that I'm running my finger against, are still cast from aluminum. And that is going to stretch from the pump into the receiver, which is going to actuate the trigger sear, as well as load the BBs up into that inner barrel. So any type of aggressive action, such as doing the one-handed pump, can potentially break not only the pump, but the arms, and thus your airsoft shotgun. So I highly encourage that you be extremely careful, extremely cautious, and not to do that in particular. Certain models do have that reinforcement, but by practice, I would not encourage it whatsoever. So that brings us to the very end of our video. Gentlemen, I hope that you found this not only informational, but also entertaining for maybe a alternative model to something that might be more indoors based, something that can be incredibly invigorating when utilized for violence. However, cautionary tale, be extremely respectful, be extremely cautious when utilizing this system in particular, because it can get very out of hand very, very quickly. I have nothing else for you guys. If you have any further questions, put them down into the comment section below. Leave a like, subscribe, and of course, go check out MilwaukeeCustomKydex.com, mckydex.com for any of your Kydex holster needs. Talon_Meyer for 15% off of your order today. I've got nothing else for you guys. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.